I have a confession to make. You know those schlocky adult dating sims that solo devs make on the Ren'Py engine? Well, they're a bit of a guilty pleasure of mine. I don't go in expecting super high quality stuff, but rather something I can boot up after a long day at work, turn my brain off and have some corny, sexy fun. But once in a while, you come across something kinda special. It's not a super common occurrence, most of these games are not all that good, but every so often I run into a title that surprises me. Today, I want to tell you about a little game called Greener Pastures. But before I move on, if you find yourself enjoying the content, please consider liking and subscribing because it really genuinely does help. Also, Twitter, Discord, and Patreon are linked below, and if you leave a highlighted comment with super thanks, I will read it out in my next video. Alright, enough of that. Greener Pastures is a free sandboxy visual novel dating sim that you can find on itch.io. As it is an 18+ title with NSFW images on its itch page, I unfortunately can't link it in the description unless I want to get a community guideline strike. But it's pretty easy to find on your own. Due to the relative obscurity of this title, I'm willing to bet that most of you watching this have not played it, and I want that to change. Greener Pastures is something I think is worth picking up, and at the price point of free, you don't get better than that. So this won't be a full breakdown like I usually do, but rather a spoiler-free spotlight on a few things that I think it does well, because I want you all to experience this game. When I first downloaded Greener Pastures, my expectations were pretty low, and can you really blame me? It's a chemo-mimi harem dating sim with the villains being an anti-sex cult called Fornication Under Careful Control, or FUCK, with its enforcers being called fuckboys. That basically screams, this is gonna be shit, but you'll have a good time. So imagine my shock when I unveiled a game with compelling characters who actually interact with one another in meaningful ways, an interesting world with a surprisingly compelling socio-political conflict that I unfortunately can't discuss without spoilers, and a story that all around features some surprisingly good writing. And of course, tons of dumb humor and plenty of H scenes for all your recreational needs. So for the purposes of this video, there are 3 things I want to highlight, and I'm going to leave the rest for you to discover on your own. First things first, this game immediately wins points in my eyes by making the main character an actual character. And just for clarity, you choose his name, which is why I'm not going to name him in this video. Look, you all know by now that I'm a huge fan of visual novels. I love them to death. But one problem I often have is that so many otherwise great visual novels feature bland self-insert protagonists who really only serve as a lens for the reader to view the story of the heroines. The protagonist of Greener Pastures, however, has his own issues, his own values, his own beliefs, and his own complete story arc. That is not what I expected from a monster girl harem hentai game. Just about everything this guy does revolves around his recently deceased parents. They left him the farm he lives on, which he uses to eke out a meager existence and distracts him from the raw grief he feels at their absence. Like, he does not handle things in a super healthy way and refuses to even enter their bedroom. So a lot of his story focuses on him trying to accept their loss, allowing himself to emotionally move on, all while trying to live up to their values and make them proud. See, they instilled a strong sense of altruism in him. He was taught from a young age that if someone needs help, you help them, and that forms the basis of the plot of Greener Pastures. The Cliff Notes version is that the aforementioned fuck is rounding up all the monster girls after successfully lobbying to make that legally allowed because they are very racist. The protagonist essentially converts his farm into a monster girl sanctuary because he sees people who need help. Now here's the thing, I haven't mentioned it publicly before, but I do actually know what it's like to lose a parent. And while I can't say I went through the same things the protagonist of Greener Pastures does, I do very much see where he comes from. There can definitely be a big internal struggle between wanting to not be held back by grief while also honoring their memory. And though I did not have the same struggles, it all strikes me as surprisingly realistic and human. You see him slowly start to heal as he builds up his new family, while also trying to establish himself as someone to be taken seriously. And I have to reiterate, this is a fucking monster girl harem game. It's not supposed to be good. The protagonist isn't supposed to be a real person, but it is, and he is. The next thing I want to highlight is something that I thought was borderline impossible. A tsundere that I actually like. I've made it no secret in the past that I really don't care for tsunderes. I find them annoying and tropey most of the time. I just can't bring myself to like the character whose defining personality trait is bitch. So what makes Greener Pastures different? Well, the resident tsundere of the game is the first heroine we meet, a cat girl named Tabitha, and despite being a tsundere, she's actually my favorite by quite a bit. Why? Well, for starters, the transition from tsun to dere happens a lot quicker than you'd expect. When we first meet Tabitha, she's scared, hurt, and alone, and she initially lashes out at the protagonist as a defense mechanism. Though once she starts to trust him more, a genuine bond starts to form, which is a pretty stark contrast to the traditional tsundere who will usually spend the first half of their story in bitch mode. I think the fact that we get to see her sympathetic side early on, and the fact that we can immediately identify the root cause of her aggressive behavior, that being the trauma she endured as a result of being on the run, made it so that she's just not as off-putting as most tsunderes are. We actually get a glimpse of the entire character right up front, rather than having to wait until we're knee-deep in her storyline. And on top of that, I also think she's a genuinely well-written character, and care was put into her personality. See, despite the fact that she gets past her initial hostility pretty quickly, she still retains many of those tsundere personality traits, though they now present through a different lens. She's not berating and belittling constantly anymore, but she still has a snarky sense of humor and can be, if you'll pardon the pun, kinda catty. She may not be totally selfish and manipulative anymore, but she's still a bit of a mischievous little shit. Her teasing goes from hostile to playful. A lot of tsunderes, even the ones that I kinda like, end up essentially becoming entirely different characters. I mean, just look at something like Shining Song Star Nova, which is one of my comfort visual novels. Julie is the tsundere, and she goes from bitchy, manipulative, and rebellious to loving, loyal, and profoundly selfless by the end of her route. Again, I love Shining Song Star Nova, and I really enjoyed Julie's route, but she's basically a different character at the end of her story. I think it's really huge that Greener Pastures kept Tabitha as the same character at her core, doesn't forget about her negative personality traits, and instead showcases this character throughout the process of healing and growth. And she very quickly shows herself to be an extremely deep and lovable character who made me thoroughly enjoy every moment with her. The final thing I want to talk about in this video is how Greener Pastures has a surprisingly mature and nuanced perspective on sexuality. Now, as you'd expect from a Monster Girl harem game, there's plenty of naughty fun to be had from beginning to end. Seriously, there is no shortage of H scenes in this game. But instead of just existing to serve the player's primal urges, sex serves as an important facet to the stories of each of these girls. Certain characters have specific sexual hang-ups, and working through them is a component of their overall growth as characters. Certain characters have story beats that involve the discovery and exploration of various kinks and fetishes, alongside the underlying emotional factors that cause them to manifest. And I'd be doing the game a brutal disservice if I didn't mention how this game also has the most healthy and mature depiction of BDSM that I've seen in any adult game. No exaggeration. Now look, BDSM isn't my kind of thing, but I do know a bit about it, and I think it's important to have a basic understanding of it just so if the situation ever arises, you know how to be safe. When it comes to adult games and visual novels, even the good ones tend to depict BDSM in a very unhealthy and unsafe manner. BDSM is introduced into Greener Pastures by the character Ariana. She's an Arachne who's the resident Dami Mommy of the group. She's the one who first brings it to the protagonist, and she's also the primary consultant when the protagonist is experimenting with the other girls. And I think it's really neat how heavily she stresses the importance of proper safety, proper consent practices, and proper aftercare. And if you've ever known somebody who's actively involved in that lifestyle in real life, you'll know that they tend to be very, very careful about that kind of thing, which is contrary to how the media often depicts them. So Greener Pastures includes things like safe words, and not just that, but they actually get used. So you'll see a character use their safe word, it could be the protagonist or one of the girls, and the partner immediately stops, gets very concerned, and they talk it out and do whatever needs to be done to make everyone comfortable. The game goes over various strategies to ensure that even the more intense acts are done safely. So they mention how when choking someone, you're supposed to press on the arteries on the side of the neck, not crush their windpipe. They talk about non-verbal signals to use as an alternative to a safe word when a character is gagged. And they make sure to have the characters go over details, boundaries, and concerns before trying anything new. Hell, they even go into some of the intricacies of how to healthily engage in consensual non-consent, which is something that can definitely get out of hand without proper preparation. And they also go over aftercare, which is something I rarely see in adult games. After an intense sexual experience, the submissive partner generally needs special care and attention, and that can vary from person to person. In some cases, the girl may want to cuddle, or to have vanilla intimacy, or maybe they just need some tea and sweet talk. At the end of the day, a healthy BDSM dynamic is supposed to have a foundation of love and respect, and even well-written adult games oftentimes don't really do a good job of that, and instead just hyper-fetishize it. Greener Pastures does an excellent job of treating sex, sexuality, and the bond that forms as partners explore these things with the reverence and importance that they really deserve. And that's not to say that the H scenes don't do their job as H scenes, or that there's none of that goofy porn game fun in Greener Pastures. Quite the opposite, in fact. But the game treats sex as more than just a masturbatory aid for the player. It actually serves as a part of how these complex people engage with one another, and I respect the absolute hell out of it. Now, is Greener Pastures the greatest piece of literature in the world? No, it's not the best thing I've ever read, and it's not my favorite visual novel, but it is something special. Greener Pastures is a game that from its initial appearance seems to be just some dumb fun and absolutely did not need to go as hard as it did. It's funny as hell, features charming, lovable characters with fully developed character arcs, explores the political institutions that could arise in a world with monster girls, and tackles its deeper, darker subjects with a surprising degree of nuance and care. Greener Pastures is a game, a visual novel, that I want you to try. Again, I can't link it below due to YouTube's TOS, but a bit of searching and you'll find it pretty easily. Now, I highlighted several instances of quality in its writing, but to me it's more than that. On top of it actually being good, it still maintains that goofy fun that I love about this style of game, even as it tells a serious story. There are villains called fuckboys, the cat girl and dog girl bicker and fight because of course they do, everyone gets into amusing and embarrassing sexcapades. It's all just fun and dumb, but at the same time, I finished the game and was left with more than just funny jokes and sexy monster girls. I had characters I'd grown attached to. I had political intrigue that I found just as interesting as the character stuff. And of all the corny adult indie games I've played over the years, there's a reason that Greener Pastures is the one I'm making a video about. Go play this game. Thanks for watching. Big thank you to my patrons, especially my God tier supporters Bulk Squatthrust, Drago, and Michael Rotolo. If you'd like to join them to support the channel and get early access to future videos, check out Patreon down below. And if you leave a highlighted comment with super thanks, I will read it out and respond in my next video. Don't forget to like and subscribe and follow me on Twitter at @adstweets and join the Discord server linked below. And please do tell me in the comments what you think of Greener Pastures if you end up playing it. I loved it and I hope you do too. Once again, thank you all for watching and I'll see you next time. Play the electro swing. Hit the road, Jack, and don't you come back no more, no more, no more, no more.